Hello, Steve White, TrekBoy89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, John Krasinski's out doing interviews, and he has a really warped idea of what Star Trek is. But the good thing is, while he's sharing his idea of what Star Trek is, which is a very MAGA idea of what Star Trek is and how to save it, he has sort of let the cat out of the bag so far as what Kurtzman's philosophy was to why he approaches Star Trek a certain way, because his approach to Star Trek is wrong. His approach is to make Star Trek for the general audience and just make different types of Star Trek and try and get all the corners of the audience and all the different genres just by making different Star Treks and trying to make it for everyone, instead of making Star Trek for Star Trek fans and having some integrity and respect for what made Star Trek and trusting that people will find that it appeals to them, and when it appeals to them that they will support it, which they've always done in the past. Now, this guy's idea is that Section 31 represents, a reality that, we can't live in utopia. Utopia doesn't work. We can't have peace. We have to have violence and deception and immorality and terrorism, all these things that we struggle with today. We have to have, and we can't have a utopian future. And you will accept that that is what Star Trek is. So that's what he's saying in all his interviews, and saying that, that's what Kurtzman also believes, because he believes Star Trek is dead, and the only way for it to survive is to make it appeal to the general masses by making it generic dystopian sci-fi, not utopian sci-fi, which was unique. Star Trek was the only place where you could get Star Trek, where you could have a utopian future. And the way that was working was we already were there. We had solved all our problems and we're just going out into the universe and having that reaffirmed by experiences with other people and re-examining and keeping examining ourselves and keep trying to improve ourselves. That was what Star Trek was. Intelligent science fiction and exploring the human condition. But these people, because they think the general audience is not intelligent enough to appreciate that, and there aren't enough people to appreciate that to support a fandom, they've just tried to make it everything but Star Trek. To the point where even people like Jessie Gender, who never really got Star Trek either, she saw it as diversity and representation because she could relate to that, and it gave her a belief that there's a place for her in the universe. She thinks that's what Star Trek is. Even she can see that Section 31 and what they're going for with Star Trek and the approach they're taking is not going to work, and it's not Star Trek. Star Trek is not generic action science fiction. You're not going to attract anyone. You're not going to have a following just by doing that, because their approach for the last 20 years, and there hasn't been a Star Trek show in 20 years, but at least with the movies, the idea was, let's go backwards and we'll see people aspiring towards the Star Trek future, and people will be able to relate to things being bad, but good people trying to do better. And that's what their idea of Star Trek is, people trying to get to utopia. Star Trek, we're already there, and we are just examining ourselves and learning and improving ourselves. That's what Star Trek was. They think it's just generic sci-fi, and if you just make Star Trek for generic sci-fi audiences, it'll survive as a brand name and they'll make money off it, but it'll be dead inside. And that's where this guy has this sort of MAGA idea of just lie, cheat, steal, say whatever you have to win, and then pat yourself on the back and fist punch because you won. And maybe, you keep a franchise alive in name only, in brand name only, but it's dead inside. It's a hollow victory. And that's the best that we can get from his approach or his idea. And same with Kurtzman. If Star Trek's dead, it's because he killed it. It's because instead of staying in that universe that people loved and, would spend a lot of money on merchandise and a lot of time and energy trying to stay in that universe and enjoy that sort of future and believe in that, and, spending your time literally watching the show, watching repeats, watching syndicated shows, buying DVDs and Blu-rays and merchandise and books and exploring the universe and keeping that alive. That's what made Star Trek fans, make money for Paramount. And these new fans don't do that. Because these generic sci-fi fans who've sort of included Star Trek in with their other sci-fi that they like, there's not enough of them, and they're not passionate enough. So, Star Trek, the original 60s, 70s audience, they're getting up to their 60s and 70s. They're not dead yet, but, the sort of bulk of Star Trek fans now are from the Next Generation era. They're in their 40s. They're not going anywhere anytime soon, but we haven't had a new generation come in, and that's what Paramount's afraid of, that they need to make, a new audience to replace us when we eventually die out in 20 or 30 years. But you don't do that by targeting kids and talking down to them, which is what they've been doing, and pulling everything that makes Star Trek unique out of Star Trek and then expecting people to find something special that, they want to keep experiencing. So they've just totally got it wrong, and I'm glad this guy's come out and said what he said, because he's so wrong that even the general audience and the media outlets and people like Jesse Gender, who have the wrong idea of Star Trek, even they can see that this is not Star Trek, this is not the way to save it, it's not the right approach, it's going in the wrong direction, it is indeed dying, and they're killing it. I mean, the only thing that was going wrong with Star Trek was when Enterprise came up as a prequel. It took some of the fun out of Star Trek, but all they had to do was go back to the post-Next Generation, time period again, and that would have been fine. So Star Trek wasn't dying, but it is now, and they're killing it. There's still hope, but there needs to be a change soon, or it will die. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of this current awareness of Star Trek and its situation.